Welcome to the Consider This channel. On this channel, we look into the most ancient of questions. We'll employ scientific fact, archaeological data, DNA evidence, and a good dose of the blindingly obvious. Now, you may be wondering why I am using an artificial voice to talk to you. Well, it's because when I talk I cough. And that is bound to be annoying for you, and, after a few sentences, annoying for me too. I hope you don't mind. In this episode we look into Chapter 1 of my book, Evidence of Soul. Now, let's get into this fascinating subject. Evidence of Soul by Sharon Patrice. Preface. We all, each and every one of us humans, have an invested interest in the concept of soul. Of course we do. We need to know we live on in some form after the death of our physical body. We hunger for reassurance that our dear departed loved ones will meet up with us on the other side of this life. It's only natural to need confirmation of our infinity. How possible or viable it is to find evidence of life after death, however, is a rare challenge, undertaken by few, but with an open mind, fondness for fact and a scientific lens we will take up the challenge and run with it to the ends of human understanding. So, buckle up, this ride could get a little bumpy. Wherever I lay my hat. Wherever I lay my hat, that's my home, sung a dusty-toned, physically very well-toned bloke from London by the name of Paul Young. The recording, released in 1983 as part of Young's debut album No Parlez, was written by Marvin Gaye, Barrett Strong and Norman Whitfield. It was somewhat of a hit in the pop music charts in the UK. The song was described, by some, as a love song. Personally, I perceived it as a sorry darling not your fault, I'm off sort of piece. It's about a wayward lad who refused to be tied down by any situation, place, or person other than by his own dictation. A song about a wide boy, a young man out to see the world, with the determination nothing should, or would, be allowed to get in his way, love nor law. He appears to have voluntarily walked away from his family and all social norms. In reality, it's quite a sad story where a life, in this case a human male, has no sense of belonging. He travels without aim, searching for the next place to lay his hat. In a different interpretation, it could be seen as home is where the heart is. In other words, he has not abandoned his family or their teachings, but in its stead looks for new beginnings and a new home to lay his hat. Whether home is where we start off from or where we choose to live and identify as belonging to is unimportant, it is a personal preference. However, where the soul, if you believe in such a thing, starts and ends its journey is quite a different matter. But let us not get ahead of ourselves. To gain knowledge of where the soul may start its journey, we first need to determine if the soul is indeed a factual phenomenon or just a traditional conceptualization we humans hold so dear. Before we begin our quest into the factual possibilities of the human soul, I first need to state there are numerous religions throughout our world today, most of which hold their own beliefs as to where the soul goes after the physical death of the flesh body, and I have no reason nor calculated anti-theory to dismiss those beliefs. My absolute intention is to trace the concept of soul, hoping to complement those beliefs and to prove, in a factual scientific reasoning, that their beliefs may very well be true. Chapter 1. The soul. What is the soul? Where is the soul located in the flesh body? What came first, the soul or the physical body structure? If the soul is a factual entity, where does it go after its host's death? Can the soul come back to enter another body? Where did the original soul come from? Do animals, birds, plants, or fish have souls? In my house there are 2 humans, a dog named Birdie, and numerous types of plants. In my garden there are twice to thrice daily visits from wood pigeons, jackdaws, sparrows, collared doves, and 2 nesting dunnocks, and yes, even more plants. We all enjoy life, and, as long as I remember to feed and water them, we will continue to enjoy life. If we believe that we are alive and we have a soul, but when our physical body no longer has life, our soul will live on, then we must see the physical body as the soul's partner or at the very least its host. When our physical body dies, our soul, we anticipate, does not. This leads us to numerous lines of questioning, and it may help in our quest to find proof of soul to consider what life actually means, because without life, the soul would have nothing to attach itself to, says the theory. According to Wikipedia, life is a quality that distinguishes matter that has biological processes, such as signaling and self-sustaining processes, from matter that does not, and is defined by the capacity for growth, reaction to stimuli, metabolism, energy, transformation, and reproduction. Various forms of life exist, such as plants, animals, fungi, protists, archaea, and bacteria. Reportedly, those in the know insist life first emerged on planet Earth some 3.7 billion years ago, and that is an important timeline to remember. It is also worth remembering, up until recently us humans were struggling with the concept of being related to apes. Of course, in reality, Homo sapiens and all other now deceased hominin, from every branch of our family tree is related to every other life form emerging from our planet, and the clue is in the DNA. Our human DNA, while unique, shares its origin with the ancient DNA of all known life forms on Earth, but more about that later. To date, and let us not forget we are still learning as we go, we have found, that is to say, it has been proven beyond any doubt, humans share a momentous 98% of their DNA with pigs. It is now understood, proven that humans share around 90% of their DNA with cats. Humans also share around 85% of their DNA with mice. But wait, there's more. You and I share about 84% of our DNA with dogs, 70% of our DNA with slugs, and more than half, 60%, of our DNA with chickens. It gets a little weird when we realize we also share approximately 60% of our DNA with bananas. 50% of our DNA is shared with trees, imagine that, trees. We also share 44% of our DNA with honeybees, and the list goes on. There is no life on Earth, ancient or contemporary, that we humans do not share a percentage of DNA with, and that is because we are all descended from the original life form that appeared around 3.7 billion years ago. Every living organism on this planet, no matter what that organism is, has DNA. Let's throw a hypothesis into the air, and let us adopt the theory every life form has a soul. Would that mean trees have souls? After all, they have life, they have DNA, why should they not have a soul? For the performance of clarity, let us, before we dive into this conundrum, and, for the sake of argument, let us equate one's soul, oneself, and one's spirit as the selfsame natural phenomenon. Together we will diagnose the very possibility that one's soul is a real-time entity of self, where it may be located within our body, and what function it may perform. After all, it can't just be hanging around until the demise of its host, surely. If so, that would make it a parasite. The concept of soul, as abstract as it may be, is not a modern-day thought process or opinion, and we can be sure of this owing to the hard work of those who persist in archaeological digs bringing forth historical artifacts, and in the know devoted linguists striving daily to decipher long-lost writings together, giving us hard evidence of historical beliefs from many ancient worldwide religions. The ancient Egyptians, for example, believed that all living creatures had souls. They believed the soul has various parts, with each part playing a particular role. This concept was referenced in a number of ancient Egyptian funerary texts, including the pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom and the coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom. They believed the individual person was made up of various elements, some physical and some spiritual. Corresponding ideas are found in both Assyrian and Babylonian religions, from the Mesopotamian region, possibly dating back to around the same era, 5,000 to 6,000 years ago or more. Other religions, for example Buddhism and Jainism, both coming from Asia, evaluate that all living things from the smallest bacterium to the largest of mammals have both body and soul. The Australian Aboriginal peoples consider the perceivable world as an incarnation of similar realities that exist in a universal, spiritual sphere. Those who study Islam and Christianity believe the soul is self and the living flesh body is simply a wrap-around of sorts. On the other hand, within Judaism, we are assured only humans have immortal souls. The latest religion. Growing up with 1950s and 60s sci-fi books and movies on TV brought about a fascination of the possibilities that maybe, yes, perhaps, we had been visited by strange-looking little gray beings or other hypothetical creatures from the great beyond we know as the universe. One such sci-fi author was an American writer and by many accounts a ne'er-do-well, by the name of Lafayette Ronald Hubbard. Hubbard eagerly pushed his theory of galactic travelers, with souls, visiting our planet. Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, was born on March 13, 1911, in Tilden, Nebraska, USA. He was, in the main, known to the public as an American author of science fiction, fantasy stories and the founder of the Church of Scientology, but his life was a little more complicated than that. In 1930, Hubbard enrolled at George Washington University to study civil engineering but dropped out in his second year. He then went on to become an officer in the United States Navy during World War II, where he commanded 2 ships but was removed from command both times. Turning his hand to writing, in 1950, he authored Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, a self-help book, distributed all over the USA. He then set about introducing a series of organizations to promote the Dianetics way of life. In short, Dianetics is a set of pseudoscientific ideas and practices regarding the non-medical, but philosophical relationship between mind and body. Whether that is the mind and body of all living creatures or just us humans is unclear. However, by 1952, Hubbard lost the rights to Dianetics in bankruptcy proceedings. He then went on to bring a new religion to the world, namely Scientology. Interestingly, Hubbard differentiated Dianetics from Scientology, stating Dianetics was a science and mental therapy whereas Scientology was a religion. In 1953, Hubbard founded the first Church of Scientology in the USA, bringing his new religion and church to Los Angeles in 1954. Scientology and the extraterrestrial Xenu. Scientology is possibly the latest in a lengthy line of religions, and for most people looking into the world of Scientology, through an everyday lens, the perception may be of a religion a little off the wall, a bit strange. Yet, it's seemingly practiced by many of Hollywood's influencers and film star elite. In fact, as of 2023, around 25,000 Americans openly report themselves to be Scientologists. Scientology, however, became increasingly controversial, one might say contentious, and during the 1960s his new religion became more notorious than celebrated. He, along with the Scientology movement, came under the intense scrutiny and legal pressure of governments in several countries worldwide. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Hubbard spent much of his time at sea on his personal fleet of ships, where he was hailed as Commodore of the Sea Organization. The Sea Organization really being an elite crazy sort of semi-paramilitary group made up from his devotees. Hubbard died on January 24, 1986, at Creston, California, USA, surrounded by a small group of Scientology officials. But what has all this to do with the soul? Xenu the extraterrestrial. Xenu is believed to be an ancient alien revered within the Church of Scientology's secret advanced technology, which we are told is a sacred teaching. According to the advanced technology, Xenu was the extraterrestrial ruler of a galactic confederacy who brought billions of his people to Earth, known to the aliens as Tegiak, in spaceships some 75 million years ago. We are told by Hubbard and his followers that Xenu stacked the aliens around volcanoes all over Earth, and killed them with hydrogen bombs, also known as a thermonuclear bomb or H-bomb, which were coincidentally first assessed in 1952 by the Americans. Official Scientology scriptures hold that the souls of these bombed-up blasted aliens adhere, in some way, to us humans, causing the entire human species spiritual harm. These events are known inside Scientology as Incident 2, and the traumatic memories, we are advised, associated with them as the Wall of Fire. The Galactic Confederacy of 75 million years ago consisted of 26 stars and 76 planets, including our own planet Tegiak, Earth. According to Hubbard and those that follow his new religion, the planets were overpopulated, containing an average collection of aliens coming in at around 78 billion per planet. Hubbard taught his followers that the Galactic Confederacy civilization was comparable to our own, with aliens walking around in clothes which looked very remarkably like the clothes they were this very moment, he wrote, and using cars, trains, and boats looking exactly the same as those on Earth. The story continues. Xenu was about to be deposed from power, so devised a cunning plan to eliminate the excess population from his control. With the assistance of psychiatrists, he gathered billions of his citizens under the pretense of income tax inspections. He then paralyzed them and froze them in a mixture of alcohol and glycol to capture their souls. The kidnapped populace was loaded into spaceships and transported to the site of extermination, which, as we now know, was Earth. Hubbard went on to describe the stories of Xenu in his film script, Revolt in the Stars. The screenplay was promoted, one might say touted around Hollywood film-making circles in 1979, but all attempts at obtaining financial backing fell through. The film was never made. I'm informed the stories of Xenu still, to this day, remain a part of Scientology doctrine. Hubbard goes on to describe the now disembodied, kidnapped victims' souls, which he names Thetans, being blown into the air by the blast. He tells us they were captured by Xenu's forces using an electronic ribbon and sucked into vacuum zones around the world. The captured Thetans were taken to what is described as a type of cinema, where they were forced to watch a 3D, super colossal motion picture for 36 days. This implanted in the Thetans something Hubbard stated was various misleading data. There were 2 implant stations cited by Hubbard and were said to have been located on Hawaii and La Palma, also known as Las Palmas, in the Canary Islands. The poor Thetans, now deprived of a sense of personal identity and with various misleading data swimming around in their subconsciousness, left the projection areas and, we are assured, flocked together in groups. I find I must interject a personal thought on this story at this point, because although this story feels a little detached from reality, I am not here to judge any person or organization's beliefs, in fact to the contrary, but I do have to question, if the Thetans now had no sense of identity, how did they recognize other Thetans to flock to? What drew them together? I mean, these are supposedly souls, let that sink in for a moment, which have been detached from their bodies violently and for no other reason than population control, captive and subjected to tortuous, misleading data, then left to go on their own way. Why? To continue. Hubbard's words explain that these groups of clustered souls gathered into one of the few remaining bodies that survived the explosions and became what are known today in Scientology as body Thetans. We are told these body Thetans are still clinging to each other and are adversely affecting everyone today, except Scientologists who have performed the necessary steps to remove them from their own lives. Later, the galactic government inner circle known as the Loyal Officers, we are assured, finally overthrew Xenu and his renegades. They locked him up in an electronic mountain trap apparently, from which he has not escaped. The location of where Xenu is incarcerated is sometimes given as the Pyrenees, which, as we are aware, is a mountain range straddling the border of France and Spain. Apparently, Earth, or should we say Tegeac, was later abandoned by the Galactic Confederacy and remains a pariah prison planet to this day. At the very least, the story of Xenu the extraterrestrial brings an interesting slant to his sci-fi creative mentally, in as much as Hubbard speaks of his notional aliens having souls. Of course, we do not know, how can we at this point in our understanding of the universe, if intergalactic travelers have souls or not? We do not even know if intergalactic travelers exist, but that we will examine in a later chapter. Fortunately, there are a number of locations and dates given in Hubbard's story of Xenu which enables us to apply the story to the factual development timeline of planet Earth. Hubbard states it was 75 million years ago when Xenu and his galactic confederacy brought billions of aliens to Earth. Let us take a look at what was going on during our planet's life span some 75 million years ago, in the locations he gives. Hawaii. As Hawaii is stated as one of the locations the poor kidnapped now bodiless aliens' souls were taken to in order to watch their 3D, super colossal motion picture, we should take a look at Hawaii 75 million years ago and see what was going on. According to www.americanoscience.org, approximately 40 to 70 million years ago, the 137 islands of Hawaii began to form. Every island in the archipelago originated from multiple underwater volcanic eruptions. Hawaii is unlike any other place on Earth because of the way it formed, but also because of its location. Volcanic eruptions caused the formation of the Hawaiian Islands, but these eruptions originated from a hot spot underneath the seafloor. In short, Hawaii did not exist 75 million years ago. Las Palmas. Las Palmas, also known as La Palma, being the second location given as an implant station, is a volcanic structure and was formed from 5.3 to 2.6 million years ago. Pyrenees. 65 million years ago, the African plate pushed north, pushing the Iberian microplate into the large Eurasian plate. This lifted the seabed, forming the Pyrenees mountain chain. Hubbard's 75 million years ago timeline for Xenu does not equate. None of the locations given by him were indeed formed that long ago, therefore did not exist. Does this mean Xenu the extraterrestrial did not visit Earth and the entire story was a manufactured hoax? Well, let us be generous and say, no, of course not. It may well be Hubbard got his timeline wrong. However, he does give us other information in his story which we can corroborate to other real-time realities. As we have already learned, Hubbard states, the Galactic Confederacy's civilization was comparable to our own, with aliens walking around in clothes which looked very remarkably like the clothes they wear at this very time, and using cars, trains and boats, which looked exactly the same as those on Earth. This, let us not forget, was written during the 1950s and 1960s. Was he saying the civilians from these 26 stars and 76 planets, including our own, had roads and train tracks, airports and seaports? The chances of that are, I'm afraid to say, are practically zero, and we will give proof to that further along in the book. My first question on this point must be, why, in the name of all things plausible, would extraterrestrial aliens, 75 million years ago from faraway planets and stars, be walking around in clothes the same style as those worn by humans on planet Earth in the 1950s/60s USA? We are also assured these aliens were using cars, trains and boats looking exactly the same as those on Earth at that time, yet they also had intergalactic spaceships? Which we did not have. Please, make it make sense. Then again, how could both stars and planets have individuals living on them? Planets, maybe, but stars? Stars are ridiculously hot astronomical objects. Just think of our sun. Stars give light. Planets orbit stars. Planets are dark and do not emit light. The light encasing the planet, think of Earth, comes directly from the star. It does not equate that the same living beings, with souls, can survive on both stars and planets, surely? Or perhaps Hubbard was saying these billions of personages or beings lived on the 76 planets, which were orbiting 26 stars? If so, we need to look for confirmation of a star system or galaxy or several systems within the galaxy. After all, Mr. Hubbard said Xenon came from the Galactic Confederacy, not the Intergalactic Confederacy, and if the Galactic Confederacy included our very own planet Earth, then it equates to that galaxy in question being the Milky Way. We on planet Earth belong to no other galaxy. Then again, what about this mixture of alcohol and glycol, used by Xenu to paralyze and freeze the aliens, in order to capture their souls? According to www.worldsbest.rehab, mixing alcohol and polyethylene glycol 3350 together will make you very poorly and is not advised. There is no information to hand at the time of writing that specifically states that soaking, drowning or freezing in a solution of alcohol and glycol will paralyze a personage or being in a condition where one might be blown up by an H-bomb and give up their soul. I believe we may agree the jury is out on the subject matter as far as any evidence being present that would specifically point to Hubbard's new religion narrative holding water. Was Hubbard for real? Did he really believe in his own dictated new religion, or was he influenced by the 1950s/60s Californian-style trip era? It does come across as a little strange that after preaching his stories of Xenu, he then wrote them down and tried to sell the manuscript as a science fiction film, which as we are now aware failed, and, therefore in my humble opinion, and, considering we can find no data, facts nor historical equation to back the story of Xenu, we should thank Hubbard for his riveting contribution and leave it there, but, in doing so realize that no matter how fanciful Hubbard made his story of Xenu, the story contained direct reference to the soul, albeit souls of aliens, but nevertheless souls. Would his fable masquerading as a new religion have been more believable if Hubbard had not mentioned the souls of the captives? Or is it the embedded human belief of soul that gave it some sort of credibility? Religions come and go through time. The contemporary God-fearing beliefs we hold today were certainly not the first held by humankind, and, it's a sure bet, they will not be the last. Some religious beliefs are cut down by invading peoples, bringing with them their own truths. The natives' original beliefs, perhaps ancient in origin, depleted and eventually lost. This has brought us to where we are today in respect of modern-day religious notions. Yet, it is not for you, nor I, to determine if this is a good way to proceed, forgetting what we thought we knew, and embracing that which we are told we should know. But, rather it is for you and I to ascertain the root cause for the theory, within most known religions, whether that religion has many gods or just the one God. Whether that faith is old or new, whether we believe in the truths of a new faith, or the narrative of an old and trusted religion, it is for us to determine the possibility of the existence of the phenomenon known as soul. Before heading over to Chapter 2, may I ask you to, please, press like, subscribe, it's free, and push that notification bell below. If you would also like to share to friends, on Facebook or Twitter X, please press share, apparently it helps my algorithms. See you in Chapter 2.